I still remember the way the crystal chandelier shimmered above us that Christmas night, beautiful, warm, almost cruelly deceiving. I had walked into my father's mansion telling myself, maybe this year will feel different. Maybe this year, I won't be the outsider at my own family's table. My name is Evelyn Carter, 28 years old, a junior architect surviving on caffeine, deadlines, and a tiny apartment that creaks when the wind blows. I didn't come for the gifts or the food. I came because Christmas is the one day I still dared to hope that family could mean something. But hope has a way of cracking. My billionaire father, Richard Carter, lifted his wine glass, studied me with an unreadable expression, and asked too casually to be harmless, "Still living in the house I bought you?" I froze, because I didn't live in any house he bought. And the moment I said so, everything began to fall apart. The Carter mansion always looked like a magazine cover during the holidays. Towering glass windows, glowing gold, garlands draped across white marble columns, a Christmas tree tall enough to scrape the chandelier. People loved to call it magical. To me, it always felt like walking into a museum where I didn't belong. I stepped inside, my heels clicking against the polished floor. My father's staff nodded politely, but their eyes flickered with that familiar mix of pity and curiosity. Everyone in this house knew I was the forgotten child, the one who lived in a cramped downtown apartment, while the rest of the Carter legacy glittered under imported lights. "Evelyn," a syrupy voice chimed. Linda, my stepmother, floated toward me in a red silk dress, smile perfectly practiced. "You made it. We weren't sure you'd feel comfortable attending this year." Translation: "We weren't sure you'd embarrass us again by existing." I forced a polite smile. "Wouldn't miss it." From across the room, Brandon, her golden boy son, lifted his champagne glass at me. "Well, if it isn't our family's starving artist," he smirked. "Still driving that ancient car?" I inhaled slowly. "Not tonight, Evelyn. Don't let them get to you." Before I could craft a response, the room shifted. Conversations dimmed, servants straightened. My father, Richard Carter, stepped out from the hallway, tall, imposing, the kind of presence that made people move without being told. He barely glanced at Linda or Brandon, his eyes locked on me. For a second, something warm flickered there, something almost proud. I let myself believe stupidly that maybe he invited me because he wanted to reconnect. "Evelyn," he said simply, voice low but steady. "Hi, Dad." My throat tightened unexpectedly. We walked toward the dining room in silence. The long mahogany table was set for 12, though only 4 of us would sit there. Crystal glasses, linen napkins, gold-plated cutlery, everything shimmering. Perfect, almost theatrical. Linda took her seat at my father's right. Brandon slid in beside her. I sat across from them, feeling like an exhibit under a spotlight. My father raised his glass. "To family," he said. I repeated the words silently in my head. To a family that never felt like mine. Dinner began with clinking silverware and polite conversation, the kind you'd hear at a corporate gala, not a home. Brandon talked about a business venture. Linda bragged about a charity gala she barely attended, and I quietly ate my dinner, trying not to shrink into invisibility. Then my father looked at me, really looked, and that was when he asked the question that would rip open everything they'd tried to hide. "Still living in the house I bought you?" Every fork stopped midair. My heart punched my ribs. The world seemed to tilt. Because in that single moment, I realized someone had lied to him, and someone had lied to me. For a moment no one breathed. The lights seemed too bright. My pulse thundered in my ears. I swallowed hard and forced myself to speak. "Dad, I don't live in any house you bought me." He blinked once, slow, as if he didn't quite hear me right. Then the air shifted sharp, electric. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice level but dangerously calm. "I transferred the money for a townhome in West Haven 2 years ago. The deed should be in your name." "Townhome? West Haven?" My stomach twisted. I shook my head. "No one told me anything. I've been living in the same tiny apartment since I graduated. I barely afford rent." A soft clatter. Linda dropped her fork. Brandon stiffened, eyes darting to his mother so fast it was a silent confession. Dad's gaze swept across the table, fixing on each of them. "Linda," he said slowly, "why doesn't Evelyn have the house?" Her lips parted but no sound came out. Brandon jumped in too quickly. voice unnaturally high. Maybe Evelyn misunderstood. She always overthinks things. Brandon, Dad snapped. You will not speak for her. The room froze again. He turned back to me, expression unreadable. Evelyn, tell me exactly what you know about this house. Nothing, I whispered. Absolutely nothing. Think you set my Danid. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing not at me but at them. Linda finally found her voice. It was complicated, Richard. The timing, the finances, things changed. Changed how? He demanded. She shrank in her seat. The woman who always floated through rooms like royalty suddenly looked small. Her fingers trembled against her napkin. We thought, she stammered, that maybe Evelyn wouldn't really need it yet. Heat flushed my face, humiliation, disbelief, anger all tangled together. Didn't need it? I've been drowning financially for years, Brandon snorted under his breath. Everyone struggles at that age. It's normal. Dad's gaze snapped to him so sharply, Brandon actually flinched. That money, Dad said, voice turning colder than the snow outside, was specifically designated for Evelyn. Not for you, not for your businesses, for her. Silence spread like frost. My father was not a man who raised his voice. He didn't need to. When he was angry, the temperature in the room simply dropped. Linda, he said, where is the money? Her face drained of color. She looked at Brandon, a silent plea. And that was when something clicked in my father's eyes. A recognition, a confirmation, a betrayal. Don't, he warned her. Don't look at him. Answer me. She swallowed hard. I pressed my hands together under the table, trying to steady the tremor in my fingers. Part of me wanted to run, another part wanted to scream. Dad's jaw tightened. You too? He said, voice dangerously low. Have exactly 5 seconds to explain why my daughter is living in a shoebox while the house I bought for her seems to have disappeared. My breath hitched. I wasn't used to being defended. I wasn't used to mattering. But right then, at that table full of golden silverware and lies, I realized the truth was about to explode. Dad's 5 seconds passed in absolute silence. Then Linda exhaled shakily, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard, the money didn't disappear. It was used. Just not the way you intended. My nails dug into my palms. Used for what? Her eyes flicked to Brandon again, and this time Dad slammed his hand against the table, not violent, not aggressive, but enough to make every ornament on the tree tremble. Look at me, he commanded. Not him, me. She froze. Brandon's face darkened. For the first time all evening, he didn't look smug, he looked cornered. Linda swallowed hard. Brandon and I thought it would be wiser to invest the money. He had a business opportunity and… My chair scraped backward. You gave him my money? The disbelief in my voice echoed off the marble walls. Linda lifted her hands defensively. It wasn't like that. Brandon needed a starting fund, and we assumed you wouldn't mind. Since you're young and you don't what? My voice cracked. Don't deserve a home? Don't deserve stability? Don't deserve the same support he gets? Her lips trembled. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, I whispered. Brandon leaned back, arms crossed. It was an investment. We planned to pay it back eventually. You're acting like this is life or death. My father stared at him with an expression I had never seen before, something between disappointment, fury, and grief. So you stole from her, he said quietly. You took the one thing meant to help Evelyn build her future, and you used it like pocket change. Brandon scoffed. Dad, it's not that serious. It is to me, I snapped. And it should be to you, considering you're 30 and living off handouts. His jaw clenched. For a second, the mask of arrogance slipped, revealing insecurity he usually hid behind expensive suits and loud opinions. Linda reached for him instinctively. Brandon didn't mean harm. He's just… Dad interrupted, voice cold as ice. I trusted you, Linda. I gave you that money because I believed you would handle it responsibly. I believed you would treat my daughter like your own. Linda's eyes shone with desperate tears. I do care for her. Then why? Dad demanded. Did she learn about the house tonight? At this table? In front of all of us? Why did you not tell her? Why did you not tell me what you did? She had no answer. Dad turned to me, and the weight in his gaze almost broke me. Evelyn. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have been living the way you have while I thought you were safe. While I thought you had a home. I didn't know what to do with his apology. I had never heard one from him before. A lump formed in my throat. I wasn't safe. I wasn't stable. I wasn't anything more than an inconvenience. He shook his head firmly. No. You are my daughter, and I intend to fix this. Brandon shot up from his chair. This is ridiculous. Dad, you can't seriously be choosing her over your own household. Dad's gaze snapped to him, sharp as a blade. Sit down. Brandon froze mid-step. Linda clasped her shaking hands together. Richard, please. Let's not escalate this. It's Christmas. Christmas, Dad repeated, his voice hollow. A holiday about family and honesty. Yet somehow, tonight is the night I learn my own daughter has been struggling alone, while the two of you lived comfortably on money that wasn't yours. I stared at my plate, blinking hard to steady myself. The room felt tight, suffocating. But for once it wasn't me causing the tension, it was the truth. Dad stood slowly, his chair scraping back. This conversation is not over, he said, voice measured. But it will continue in my office. Both of you will follow me. Now. He looked at me last, eyes softening for a brief moment. Evelyn, come with us. You deserve to hear everything. My heart pounded. This was the moment the foundation of our family began to crack quietly, deeply, irrevocably. I rose from my seat, legs trembling but resolute. Whatever awaited behind the doors of his office, I knew life would never be the same after tonight. My father's office had always intimidated me. Dark oak walls, heavy leather chairs, a massive desk that made anyone standing in front of it feel small. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom. Dad closed the door behind us, the soft click sounding louder than a slammed gate. Linda hovered near the bookshelf, wringing her hands. Brandon paced like a caged animal. I stood near the corner, arms folded tightly, not to look strong, but to keep myself from shaking. Dad walked around his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick folder. He tossed it onto the table. Documents spilled slightly from the edges. What is that? Brandon demanded. Dad didn't look at him. Proof, he said. Proof of what you did with Evelyn's money. Linda's face drained of color. You investigated us? Dad's voice sharpened. No, I verified what you claimed. Except the numbers didn't match. Transfers didn't match. Business expenses didn't match. His eyes narrowed. And nothing, absolutely nothing, led to a house in Evelyn's name. Brandon snorted, but it sounded forced. So what? You think we ran off to Vegas with it? Dad's tone dropped to a chilling calm. I think you used it to fund your startup. The same startup you claimed was self-funded. Brandon's jaw twitched. So, what if I did? It was an investment. I would have paid it back. You didn't ask permission, I said quietly. You didn't even tell me. He spun toward me, eyes flashing. I didn't think you'd care. You're always broke, always struggling. Why would you need a house right away? The words sliced deeper than he realized. Dad's expression hardened, voice tight with restrained fury. Brandon, you don't get to decide who needs what. That money was not yours. Linda stepped forward, desperate. Richard, we only wanted to help him succeed. He's been under so much pressure. And Evelyn? Well, she's independent. She's always been able to handle things on her own. I let out an incredulous laugh. Handle things? I've been drowning, Linda. I've been working 2 jobs, skipping meals, terrified of losing my apartment. And all this time, you had $500,000 meant for me. Linda covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't want to know, I whispered. And that's worse. Dad opened the folder and slid a page forward. This, he said, is the bank statement confirming the full transfer I made for Evelyn's home. He slid another page. And this is the business account your names are tied to. Every transaction matches the amount missing from her fund. Brandon looked cornered, the kind of cornered that turned cruelty into a shield. He stepped toward me, pointing a trembling finger. You think you're some kind of victim? Grow up, Evelyn. Life is hard for everyone. I took one opportunity, and you're acting like I stole your destiny. Dad's voice cracked like thunder. You stole her safety. You stole her stability. You stole my trust. Brandon flinched as if struck. Linda finally collapsed into a chair, sobbing into her hands. Dad pressed his palms against the desk, leaning forward. You two didn't just take money, he said. You took the future I tried to give my daughter. Do you understand that? I felt something shift inside me, a strange mixture of relief and grief that someone finally spoke the truth, grief that it wasn't spoken years ago. Dad straightened, his tone final. Here are the terms. He pointed to the folder between them. You will return every cent owed. You will provide documentation for any money already spent. And Brandon, your startup will undergo a full audit. Immediately. What? Brandon exploded. You can't control my company. I can, Dad said sharply. When it's built on stolen money. I watched Brandon's composure crumble. Pride cracked. Confidence drained. For once, he looked afraid. I gave you chance after chance, Dad said quietly. But you took from the wrong person. His eyes met mine. You took from her. My breath hitched. I'd never heard my father protect me like that before. He turned away from them and said, with a finality that shook the room, this is only the beginning. Tomorrow morning, we bring my lawyers into this. Linda gasped. Brandon cursed under his breath. But Dad wasn't done. He faced me fully this time, voice soft but unwavering. Evelyn, from this moment forward, you're not going through any of this alone. For the first time that night, the weight on my chest loosened, because the truth wasn't just unraveling. It was finally turning in my favor. The next morning, I woke to the sound of raised voices drifting down the staircase. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard Brandon. You're ruining my life over one mistake. My chest tightened. I walked downstairs, each step heavier than the last. In the living room, Brandon was pacing, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. Linda stood beside him, clutching his arm, whispering frantic reassurances. Dad, calm but unyielding, stood opposite them with a stack of legal documents. Their argument cut off the moment they saw me. Brandon pointed at me as if I were a threat. There she is. The reason everything is falling apart. I froze. Dad's voice sharpened instantly. Brandon, enough. No, Brandon shouted. You treat her like some helpless victim, but she's the one destroying this family. I stepped forward, trembling. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't take anything from you. He laughed bitter, hysterical. You took Dad's attention, his sympathy, his money. You always get what you want in the end. My breath caught. Always get what I want? I'd spent years clawing for scraps of affection in this house, invisible at every dinner, dismissed in every conversation. And now he claimed I was the privileged one? Dad's voice cut through the moment. The auditors found discrepancies in your startup accounts, he said. Half the funds Evelyn should have received were funneled into personal expenses, luxury items, vacations, a private membership club. Brandon, this isn't just irresponsible, it's fraudulent. Brandon's face blanched. That money was mine to use. It was not yours, Dad thundered. It was Evelyn's. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Linda stepped between them, hands shaking. Richard, please. Brandon made mistakes, but he's not a criminal. This will ruin him. Dad's expression softened only slightly. He ruined Evelyn's chance at stability. She lived in fear of eviction, while he used her money to play entrepreneur. Linda's voice cracked. She's strong. She survived. A sharp anger ignited inside me. Why do you speak like surviving is something I should be grateful for? Why is it acceptable that I struggled while you protected him from every consequence? Linda turned toward me, tears filling her eyes. Evelyn, you didn't mean anything, I said quietly. You just didn't care. Brandon scoffed again, arms crossing defensively. Are we really doing this? Evelyn, you've always been dramatic. Dad spoils you the second you look sad. I stepped closer, voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. Do you have any idea what my life has actually been like? I've worked double shifts, skipped meals, stayed up nights terrified I wouldn't make rent. I've cried in stairwells because I didn't have anywhere else to go. He blinked, surprised. Maybe even shaken, but the arrogance crept back. That's not my problem. Dad slammed a document onto the table. It is now. Brandon jerked back as if the papers themselves were venomous. These, Dad said, are the legal filings. If Evelyn chooses to pursue charges, you could face real consequences. Financial, civil, possibly criminal. Linda gasped, clutching Brandon's arm tighter. Richard, no please. You can't let her do this. She's angry, she doesn't understand. She understands perfectly, Dad said. For once, she gets to decide what happens next. Every eye shifted to me. My heart pounded against my ribs. For years I dreamed of being seen. Now the spotlight burned. Brandon sank into a chair, shaking his head as if the room was collapsing around him. You wouldn't, he whispered. You wouldn't actually ruin me. I stared at him, at the fear, the desperation, the shattered arrogance, and something inside me hurt. Not for him, but for the years I spent thinking my pain didn't matter. I spoke quietly, but every word landed heavy. I don't want to ruin anyone. I never have. But I won't be erased anymore. I won't be the expendable one. I won't let you take from me again. Dad exhaled slowly. Pride and sorrow tangled in his eyes. Whatever you choose, he said softly. I'll stand behind you. Brandon's voice broke. Evelyn, please. The sudden vulnerability in his tone startled me. But it was too late. Too late for apologies, shaped like panic. Too late for regret born only after consequences. I took a breath that felt larger than my lungs. I won't press charges. Yet, I said. But you will repay everything, in full. And you will sign whatever agreements Dad's lawyers prepare. Brandon buried his face in his hands, shaking. Linda burst into tears, not the delicate ones she used to manipulate, but raw, messy, terrified sobs. Dad nodded once, firm and final. Then that is how it will be. And just like that, the Carter family as I knew it shattered. Not with screams, but with signatures. Not with violence, but with accountability. And for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. Not because I won, but because I finally stood up. The next week unfolded like a storm that had finally decided to clear, but not without tearing down everything in its path first. Dad's legal team moved fast. Too fast for Linda. Far too fast for Brandon. Every morning, I received an email update, audit reports, repayment plans, asset evaluations, agreements requiring signatures, things I never imagined my name would be attached to. It felt surreal. I wasn't a bystander anymore. I wasn't the forgotten daughter, slipping between the cracks of this mansion. I was someone whose losses mattered. Whose future mattered. Dad insisted I join every meeting, even if I didn't understand half the legal jargon. You deserve to hear all of it, he said. No more decisions about your life made behind closed doors. And he meant it. The consequences. On the third day, Dad and I walked into the study where Linda and Brandon sat waiting. Linda looked exhausted, makeup streaked, eyes swollen, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Brandon looked worse. Not angry, not arrogant. Just hollow. Dad placed a folder on the coffee table. These are the finalized terms, he said. Evelyn has agreed not to pursue charges as long as the repayments are fulfilled. Linda's voice cracked. We will repay everything, Richard. Every cent. I promise. She reached for the papers with trembling fingers, scanning them frantically. I saw the panic in her eyes as she reached the repayment amount more than she could easily afford. She whispered. How are we supposed to? Dad cut in, calm but resolute. That is not my concern. Nor Evelyn's. You made choices. Now you face them. Brandon swallowed hard. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely audible. Is there any way to renegotiate? Dad looked at him for a long, silent moment. It was the hardest I'd ever seen him. Not cruel, just unflinchingly fair. No, he said. You will repay what you took. His gaze softened slightly. And Brandon, I hope you understand this is not punishment. It's accountability. Brandon nodded weakly, eyes fixed on the carpet. Then Dad turned to me. Evelyn, would you like to add anything? For once in my life, the room waited for my words. I inhaled slowly. I don't want revenge, I said. I just want the chance I was supposed to have. A home, stability, and honesty. My voice wavered, but I didn't look away. I'm not trying to destroy your lives. I just won't let you keep destroying mine. Linda brought a shaking hand to her mouth, tears streaming again. Brandon shut his eyes, jaw tightening as though swallowing a bitter truth. The papers were signed. And just like that, the theft that had stolen years of my life was acknowledged, not minimized, not denied, not buried, recognized, addressed, corrected. It didn't erase the past, but it finally stopped bleeding into my present. A father's gift. That evening, Dad knocked on my bedroom door in the mansion. He held a small velvet box. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "I owe you more than apologies. I owe you stability." I opened the box. Inside was a single silver key. My breath hitched. "What is this?" "A home," he said. "I've purchased one for you. In your name. No conditions, no surprises. You deserve a foundation to build your life on." My heart stuttered between disbelief and grief for the years I didn't have this. I whispered, "Dad, why now?" He sighed, sitting beside me. "Because I spent a long time believing you were fine, independent, strong. I didn't see that independence came from necessity, not choice." He looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen since I was a child. "I can't change the years you struggled, but I can change what comes next." Tears blurred my vision. I didn't hug him yet, but I didn't pull away when he gently squeezed my hand. It was a start. Moving out. 2 days later, I packed my things from the apartment I'd fought so hard to survive in. The fading curtains. The creaking bed frame. The tiny stove that burned everything except hope. I stood in the center of the empty space, breath shaking. "I'm not coming back," I whispered to the walls that had heard every breakdown. And for the first time, it didn't feel like running away. It felt like stepping forward. Dad drove me to the new house himself. It sat on a quiet street with trees that swayed as if welcoming me home. A porch with warm lights. Large windows glowing like hope I'd forgotten how to feel. I unlocked the door. Sunlight spilled across wooden floors that echoed softly under my feet. This time, the echo didn't sound lonely. It sounded like possibility. Dad placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You earned this," he said. I nodded, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. No, I thought. I finally allowed myself to have this. The first night in my new home felt unreal. No street noise. No cramped walls. No fear that a late paycheck would send my life crashing down. Just quiet. Warm, breathable quiet. I sat on the living room floor with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching the soft glow of the porch light spill through the windows. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space. Space to exist. Space to breathe. Space to finally become someone other than the girl constantly bracing for disaster, learning to belong somewhere. Over the next few weeks, my life shifted in ways I didn't expect. I bought furniture that reflected me, not what I thought a Carter daughter should own. Soft earth tone rugs, potted plants that somehow didn't die under my care, warm lights instead of harsh fluorescence. I cooked real meals. I slept without my wallet under my pillow. I woke up without dread. Every so often, I'd catch myself whispering into the empty room, "You're safe now." And for once, I believed it. Therapy, boundaries, and the word enough. Dad insisted on covering the cost of a therapist, not because he thought I was broken, but because he wanted me to have support he never gave before. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to relive the nights I'd cried alone on my apartment floor, or the mornings when I pretended everything was fine because the world didn't give me room to fall apart. But therapy taught me the word I needed most. Enough. I was enough. My feelings were enough. My boundaries were enough. And surviving didn't make me dramatic. It made me strong. Rebuilding a relationship with my father. Dad visited often, quiet, hesitant, careful not to overstep. Sometimes he'd bring dinner. Other times, he'd just sit on the porch and talk about work, as if trying to practice the art of being a father in real time. One evening, we sat with 2 mugs of tea between us. The sky above was fading into twilight. He cleared his throat. "I regret not seeing you sooner," he said softly. "Not just the money, but everything. The distance, the silence." My throat tightened. "I didn't know how to ask for help," I admitted. "It always felt like needing you made me weak." He shook his head. "No, it made me blind." A quiet truce settled between us, not perfect but genuine. And for the first time, I allowed myself to consider that my father wasn't just a man who failed me. He was a man trying to change, letting go of the life I used to carry alone. I boxed up the last of my belongings from the old apartment. A stack of overdue bills, a bent spoon, a mug with a chipped handle, objects that had carried my survival story. I brought them home, not to keep, but to release. In the trash bin behind the house, I lowered the mug gently, as if saying goodbye to the girl who clung to it. "You did your best," I whispered. The winter breeze brushed against my cheek, almost like a nod. The shift in the Carter household. Meanwhile, Dad updated me occasionally, not in detail, but just enough. Linda and Brandon had moved into a smaller rental. They were repaying the money steadily. They weren't attempting contact. Part of me felt relief. Part of me felt sorrow for the family I wished I'd had but never did. But mostly, I felt distance, healthy distance. My therapist told me, healing isn't fixing what hurt you, it's giving yourself what you were denied. And that's exactly what I did, finding purpose again. Work finally became more than survival. I started taking on clients. I genuinely cared about single mothers looking for affordable spaces, students needing small studios, older women wanting comfort instead of extravagance. I understood them. I designed for them. And slowly, my days began to feel like my own. One afternoon, my boss leaned over my draft and said, "You've changed, Evelyn. There's a confidence in your work I haven't seen before." I smiled, because I knew exactly where it came from. Home, stability. Knowing I no longer lived on the edge of collapse. Redefining family. Family wasn't a mansion. It wasn't blood. It wasn't money. It was the people who stood with you when your world cracked open. For years, I'd believed I had no one. But now, sitting in my sunlit kitchen with my father sipping coffee across from me, I realized I was building something new, something honest, something mine. Dad looked up and asked quietly, "How are you adjusting?" I answered without fear for the first time. "I'm learning how to be happy." And the smile he gave me, small, grateful, almost proud, felt like a healing I never expected. A full year passed before I even realized how much my life had changed. The winter air felt different this time, less sharp, less heavy. More like a reminder that cold seasons end, and warmth always returns, even if slowly. I spent Christmas Eve in my new home, decorating a small pine tree I picked out myself. White lights, gold ribbons, a single silver star at the top. Simple, peaceful, mine. Just as I stepped back to admire it, the doorbell rang. Dad stood outside, bundled in a dark coat, holding 2 paper cups of peppermint hot chocolate, the exact drink he used to buy me when I was little. The memory nearly knocked the air out of me. "Thought I'd stop by," he said with a shy smile. "If you'll have me." Something warm bloomed in my chest. Always. A Christmas for 2. He stepped inside, eyes widening slightly. "You've really made this place a home." I glanced at the soft lights, the cozy rug, the plants thriving in the corner. "Yeah," I whispered. "I guess I have." We sat by the fire, no extravagant feast, no polished silver, no tension humming under crystal chandeliers. Just the crackle of flames and my father sitting across from me, not as the billionaire head of the Carter family, but simply as a dad trying to reconnect with his daughter. After a long stretch of comfortable silence, he spoke. "Evelyn, can I give you something?" I frowned playfully. "Dad, you already gave me a house. I don't need anything else." He chuckled. "This one's different." He reached into his coat pocket and placed a wrapped box in my hands. Small, neat, carefully folded edges. My heart thudded. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a picture frame empty, except for a handwritten note tucked into the glass. "Fill this with the moments you choose, not the ones you survived." My vision blurred instantly. "Dad," my voice trembled. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I can't erase what happened, Evelyn, but I want to be part of what comes next. Not because I owe you, but because I love you. And I'm proud of who you've become, despite us, despite everything." Tears slid down my cheeks. For all the words I'd waited years to hear, these were the ones that finally reached me. "I'm proud of me too," I whispered, closing the circle. Later that night, after Dad left and the house settled into a warm hush, I lit a candle by the window. Outside, houses glittered with Christmas lights. Last year, those lights made me feel alone. This year, they made me feel hopeful. I picked up the empty frame, walked to the Christmas tree, and took a selfie. Messy hair, puffy eyes, smiling anyway. A real moment. A moment I chose. I slid the photo into the frame. When I placed it on the mantel, a quiet truth settled into my chest. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living, and I finally believed I deserved to. The glow of the fire danced across my new beginning. I closed my eyes, whispered into the stillness. "I'm okay now. And I'm finally home."